Hello and welcome to the C++ 11 Beginner Tutorials by Gamer2Creator. I'm Chris. So now that we have functions and methods under our belt, we need to talk about overloading functions and methods. Now, what this allows you to do is to create several functions or methods with the same name and return type, but with different parameters. And these are actually completely separate functions, even though they have the same name. Let me give you an example. Now what this function does is it calls the sqrt function, which is part of C++, and it sends in our double parameter here called number, and it'll return the square root of number, so it gets what the function name says. Now here we've taken in a double and we've returned a double, because the square root could be, a fractional number, and so we need a floating point type. We're going to use double for that double accuracy. But we also might want to send in an integer Now what's happening here is that we've instead taken in an integer and we've sent that to the square root function. Now technically what we want to happen is this. We'll convert the number, the integer, to a double and then get the square root. Now this might not be the world's greatest example, but we do have function overloading here, because these have the same exact name, they have the same return type, but they take in different parameters. And I can prove to you that this is working in code. As you can see, we've sent in a double of 144.0 and an integer of 144. Now, since this is a double, this one should be called, and when we call it with the integer, this one should be called. So let's see. As you can see, we've jumped up to right here, the get square root with a double. And it returned 12, just as we anticipated. And then on the next line, we step into, and we've gone to this function with the integer parameter, and then it'll convert our integer into a double, get the square root, and it still returns 12.0. So that's very basic idea of function overloading. You can do whatever you want in here. We could have two completely different function bodies here, and it would still work. Now we can't overload by return type. If I change this to a float, and it's still working. Well, that's because these are actually different. Let's change this to a double. And there we go. Now that these have the same parameter list and the same name, we can't overload. The only thing that's different is the return type. As you can see, you cannot overload functions distinguished by return type alone. And it's important to understand return type alone. That's why it first worked when I had the int down here. Because now they can be distinguished by the parameter. So just know that the only thing that they cannot be different, or how can I say that clearly? If the return type is the only thing that's different out of the three things of the name, the return type, and the parameter list, you have a problem. If the name or the parameter list is different, you're good to go. And you can have any number of parameters as long as the order of that list is different, or the list itself is shorter or longer. For example, let's try something. Let's try... We're just going to return void, but we're just going to make some function that doesn't really matter. And we're going to do a double D char C and a bool B. Now just to demonstrate that if we have a char C, a double D, and a bool B, what do you think is going to happen here? Will this compile? And the answer is yes, it will. Because this parameter list is different than this parameter list in the order that they show up. Even though this one has one double, one char, and one bool, and this has one double, one char, and one bool, they are still different. This is called the signature. That is your function's signature, including the return type, even though we know that that can't be the only thing that's different for overloading to work. And of course you can have your own types in here. Player P. We could have an M. My typing skills are not doing very well. And then there we go. Now if we change this to a double, we can see these two functions would be identical if not for the player and the employee. If we change this to player, we would again have a conflict. And as you can see, the build failed. And it's saying that this function already has a body because there's a previous definition. And so there you have it. That is function overloading. You'll see more examples of this in the following videos, as everything that we've learned is going to be used more and more often, and so it'll have more opportunity to sink in.